This house belongs to me now. Margaret's voice crackled through my phone speaker, dripping with satisfaction. I've changed all the locks. Don't bother coming back. I sat in my hospital bed, still groggy from surgery, trying to process what my mother-in-law had just told me. You did what? It's for the best, Amanda, she continued, her tone sickly sweet. After what happened to Michael, you can't expect to keep living in our family home. You're not really family anymore, are you? My name is Amanda Collins, and 3 weeks ago, my husband Michael died in a car accident. Now, while recovering from emergency gallbladder surgery, I was learning that my mother-in-law had seized the opportunity to take everything from me. Margaret, that's my house, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. Michael and I bought it together. She laughed, the sound harsh and hollow. With whose money, dear? The down payment came from us. Michael was our son. You were just the woman he unfortunately married. Now that he's gone, it's time for you to move on. I closed my eyes, thinking about the home Michael and I had built together over the past 5 years. The garden we'd planted, the walls we painted, the memories we created. Margaret had always resented that Michael chose to buy a house instead of moving into their family compound where she could keep a close eye on us. I'll be discharged tomorrow, I said calmly. We can discuss this then. There's nothing to discuss. I've already moved your things to storage. Don't make this difficult, Amanda. You know how upset I can get when people cross me. Oh, I knew. I'd spent 5 years watching Margaret manipulate everyone around her, using her wealth and social connections to always get her way. She'd never approved of me, the middle-class teacher who trapped her precious son. Now she was making her final power play. What Margaret didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this. Michael and I had seen how she treated his brother's widow, essentially forcing her out of the family after his death 2 years ago. We'd made sure to protect ourselves legally. One more thing, Margaret added, her voice sharp. I've arranged for the movers to clear out your little home office tomorrow. All those papers and files you keep, they're just cluttering up the house. My heart skipped a beat. My office, where I kept all my documents, including, "Don't touch my office, Margaret," I said, an edge creeping into my voice. Too late, dear. The movers are already here. Oh, what's this? A safe. How interesting. I'm sure Michael left me the combination somewhere. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking not from fear, but from anger. Margaret had finally overplayed her hand. I picked up my phone again and dialed a number I'd hoped I'd never have to use. David Harrison speaking, a deep voice answered. Mr. Harrison, this is Amanda Collins. I need you to execute the contingency plan we discussed. Margaret's making her move. There was a pause, then a slight chuckle. I was wondering when she'd try something like this. Don't worry, Amanda. Everything's in place. Would you like me to send someone to the house now? Yes, please. She's trying to break into my safe. Consider it handled. And Amanda? I'm sorry about Michael. He was smart to help you prepare for this. After hanging up, I lay back in my hospital bed, remembering the conversation Michael and I had after his brother's death. My mother will never change, he'd said. Promise me you'll let Harrison protect you if anything happens to me. I promised, though I'd hoped it would never come to this. Michael had known his mother better than anyone. He'd seen through her manipulations, her need for control, her inability to accept that her sons had lives separate from her. The next few hours were quiet, too quiet. Margaret didn't call back, and I wondered if Mr. Harrison's team had already arrived at the house. I dozed off eventually, exhausted from surgery and stress, only to be awakened by a text message. Everything is secured, Mr. Harrison wrote. Your mother-in-law received quite a surprise when the security team arrived. Would you like to know what happened? I smiled for the first time in days, imagining Margaret's face when she realized she wasn't the only one who could play this game. Tell me everything, I replied. The pieces were in place now. Tomorrow, when I left the hospital, I would show Margaret exactly what kind of woman her son had married. She thought she was dealing with a grieving widow, too weak and dependent to fight back. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, I was discharged from the hospital. As my best friend Kate drove me home, I filled her in on Mr. Harrison's texts from the previous night. Apparently, Margaret nearly fainted when the security team showed up, I said, managing a small smile. She was in my office with a locksmith, trying to crack my safe. Kate gripped the steering wheel tighter. That woman has some nerve. What happened then? They presented her with a cease and desist order and informed her that she was trespassing. The look on her face when they showed her my name on the deed. I trailed off, remembering what Michael had done to protect me. 6 months before his death, he legally transferred the house entirely into my name. Mom will try to take everything, he'd warned me. She always does. We kept it quiet, knowing Margaret would explode if she found out. The house she thought was her family property had been mine alone all this time. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw the new security cameras Mr. Harrison's team had installed. The locks had been changed again, this time by my people. Margaret's luxury SUV was parked across the street, and I could see her watching us from behind her designer sunglasses. "Need me to stay?" Kate asked, eyeing Margaret warily. "No, I got this." Harrison's team is still inside, documenting everything she tried to move or take. I walked up to my front door, ignoring Margaret as she got out of her car. The security guard posted at the entrance nodded to me, checking my ID before letting me in. "Amanda," Margaret's voice rang out behind me. "This is ridiculous. You can't do this to me. I'm your mother-in-law." I turned slowly, facing her. "Was my mother-in-law, Margaret. You gave up that title when you tried to steal my home while I was in surgery." "Steal?" she sputtered, her perfectly made-up face reddening. "This is our family property. Michael would have wanted." "Michael knew exactly what you would do." I cut her off. "Why do you think he put the house in my name alone?" She froze, her mouth hanging open. "He wouldn't, you're lying." Mr. Harrison chose that moment to step outside, carrying a thick folder. "Mrs. Bennet," he addressed Margaret formally, "I have here the documented evidence of your attempted theft, including security footage of you instructing the locksmith to break into Mrs. Collins' personal safe. Would you like to explain your actions to the police, or shall we handle this privately?" Margaret's face went from red to pale in seconds. "You can't prove anything. I was just protecting our family interests." "Actually," I said, pulling out my phone, "I have you on record stating your intentions quite clearly. Would you like to hear it again? The part where you admitted to changing my locks and moving my belongings while I was in the hospital." For the first time since I'd known her, Margaret looked uncertain. Her carefully constructed facade of control was cracking. "The movers," she said weakly. "I already paid them to clear out the house tomorrow." "Cancel them," I replied firmly. "And Margaret? The family photos and heirlooms you tried to take, the ones you claimed were Bennett family property? Michael gave those to me in his will. Every single one of them." This was another detail we planned carefully. Michael knew his mother would try to erase me from the family history, so he specifically willed me the photos and mementos that meant the most to him. "You can't do this to me," she whispered, but the fight was leaving her voice. "I'm his mother." "Yes, you are. And if you had acted like a mother, if you had supported me after losing my husband, your son, things might be different. Instead, you tried to kick me out of my own home while I was in the hospital. Those aren't the actions of a grieving mother, Margaret. They're the actions of a bully." Mr. Harrison stepped forward. "Mrs. Bennet, I suggest you leave now. Any further attempts to enter this property without Mrs. Collins' permission will result in legal action." Margaret looked from me to Mr. Harrison, then back to me. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of what she'd lost. Then her mask slipped back into place. "This isn't over," she said, but her usual authority was missing. "Yes, it is," I replied quietly. "Goodbye, Margaret." I watched as she got into her car and drove away, her perfect posture finally slumping in defeat. Inside, the security team was finishing their documentation. Everything Margaret had tried to take was being photographed and returned to its proper place. In my office, I found the safe untouched. Margaret hadn't managed to crack it. Inside were the documents Michael and I had prepared, along with something else. Something even Mr. Harrison didn't know about. But that would have to wait. For now, I had my home back. The home Michael and I had shared, where we built our life together. Margaret had tried to take that away from me, but she failed. And she had no idea what was coming next. A week after Margaret's failed takeover attempt, I sat in my office, finally ready to open the letter Michael had left in our safe. "Only read this if Mom tries something," he'd written on the envelope. I'd been waiting for the right moment, and now, holding the slightly worn paper, I knew it was time. My dearest Amanda, Michael's familiar handwriting made my heart ache. If you're reading this, it means Mom has shown her true colors. I'm sorry I'm not there to protect you from her, but I know you're stronger than she ever imagined. There's something you need to know. I read the letter twice, my hands trembling. Then I called Mr. Harrison. Are you sure about this? He asked after I explained what Michael had revealed. Absolutely. Can you set up the meeting? 2 days later, I sat in the formal living room of my house, waiting. The doorbell rang precisely at 2 p.m. Margaret stood there, impeccably dressed as always, flanked by her lawyer. Come in, I said pleasantly, noting how she flinched at my calm demeanor. Thank you for agreeing to meet. Mr. Harrison sat beside me as Margaret and her lawyer took seats across from us. The tension in the room was palpable. Let's make this quick, Margaret's lawyer began. My client is willing to offer. Actually, I interrupted. I called this meeting to share some information. I pulled out Michael's letter and several documents from a folder. Margaret, did you know that Michael was investigating the Bennett Family Foundation? Her face went rigid. What are you talking about? The charitable foundation you've managed since your husband died. Michael discovered some irregularities in the accounts. He was planning to address it before the accident. That's ridiculous, she snapped, but I saw fear flash in her eyes. Those accounts are private. Not to a board member, I replied softly. Which Michael was, and now, as his heir, I am. The color drained from Margaret's face. Her lawyer leaned forward, suddenly alert. For the past 15 years, I continued, laying out documents one by one. You've been using the foundation's funds for personal expenses. Private jets, luxury vacations, even that attempted house lockout last week, all paid for with charitable donations meant to help underprivileged children. You can't prove any of this, Margaret whispered, but her hands were shaking. Michael kept meticulous records. He was going to give you a chance to make it right, to quietly repay the funds. But now, I met her eyes steadily. Now those records are mine. Her lawyer was already reviewing the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim. Mrs. Bennett, we should discuss this privately. No, Margaret stood up, her voice shrill. This is blackmail. You're trying to ruin me because I wanted to protect my family's property. Sit down, Margaret, I said firmly. I'm not trying to ruin you. I'm offering you the same chance Michael would have, a chance to make this right. She sank back into her chair, suddenly looking older than her years. What do you want? 3 things. First, you'll repay every penny you took from the foundation. Second, you'll resign from the board immediately. And third, I paused, making sure she was listening. You'll never try to interfere with my life again. Or what? She challenged, but the fight was leaving her voice. Or these records go to the IRS, the FBI, and every major newspaper in the state. Your choice. The next hour was spent in detailed discussion between the lawyers. Margaret sat silently, watching as her carefully constructed world shifted on its axis. By the time they left, she had signed preliminary agreements to begin the repayment process. At the door, she turned to me one last time. You've won. Are you happy now? I thought about Michael, about the life we'd shared, about the future we planned. This was never about winning, Margaret. It was about justice, for the foundation, for Michael's memory, and for me. After they left, I went to her bedroom and pulled out the photo album Michael and I had made together. In it was a picture from our wedding day, one of the few where Margaret was genuinely smiling before she decided I wasn't good enough for her son. You were right, I whispered to Michael's smiling face in the photo. She never changed, but you gave me the tools to protect myself. The next morning, I received a brief text from Margaret. I'm sorry. For everything. It wasn't much, but it was more than I ever expected from her. 2 months later, the Bennett Family Foundation had a new board of directors. The local papers praised the organization's restructuring and renewed commitment to transparency. Margaret had retreated to her vacation home in Florida, her social media presence notably silent. And me. I was finally able to grieve properly for Michael, to remember our love without the shadow of his mother's interference. In the end, that was worth more than any victory over Margaret. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about standing firm, protecting what's right, and honoring the memory of those we've lost. I think Michael would have been proud of that.